Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I want to consider how we set out a problem and then how we go about solving an inheritance question. Essentially, there's a couple of different elements to uh, the question and how we lay it out. The first is what we do is we draw a line, and then under the line we list or we name the various relatives who survived the deceased. And the question that quite often comes up is how do we know who to put underneath here? And previously we've considered that there are three main groups of relatives. One is the Zawil Furud. The second is the Asabat. And the third, if you recall, is the Zawil Arham. If we look at the Zawil Arham, we learned last time that they only ever receive anything if both the Zawil Furud, there are no Zawil Furud or Asabat. So, assuming that there are one of these two, we can automatically say that none of the Zawil Arham will need to be placed underneath the line. Then we have the Asabat, and we know that the Asabat of various categories. It starts with the descendants. Let's use a different color. Starts with descendants. Then it goes on to the ascendants. Then the father's descendants. And finally, the grandfather's descendants. So let's assume there's a son. If there's a son, then it will never reach any of these categories, and so we can ignore father, grandfather, brothers and sisters, and the uncles and aunts, and the uncles and their sons. If there's no sons, then we'll move on to the next category, and so on and so forth. So, depending on the answer to that question, we would place the son here, for example, Ibn, and then we wouldn't need to go any further with Asabat. And then the final category is the Zawil Furud. We know that previously we've learned that the Zawil Furud are 12 types. 12 different people fall into this category. But we will also learn in future lessons that certain of those categories, certain of those people actually get deprived when others are present. So if we take the mother, and the Jadda, grandmother, you'll learn that the Jadda actually doesn't ever get anything if the mother is alive. So on that basis, if they're both alive at the time the person passed away, we can actually just not include Jadda. And in this way we will learn that it will cut down this number of 12 down to say 6, 5, whatever it may be. There's actually only 6 different types of people who get off right, which is the son, the mother, the father, the daughter, bint, the husband, zawj, and the wife, zawja. And obviously zawj and zawja won't be together, so it'll be one or the other, and you may have all of these together. So let's assume that it's just these ones. So we would put these 5 down, and no one else out of the 12 categories would ever come into the picture. And as you learn who gets what and when they're deprived, you'll get a clearer picture of which of the 12 to put underneath here. So that's how we decide who to put on the line. We can usually get rid of Zawul Arham, and once we know who is the closest of the Asabat, we can ignore the rest. And then from the Zawul Furud, we can usually exclude certain categories, and then that leaves a select few that we need to put underneath. The next stage is, if we go down page a bit, so we've got our line, and now and this line say represents X, and underneath the line we place his surviving relatives. So we know that, let's say there's a husband, Zoj, and a father. And as you go along, you'll learn that the various states of each of these relatives. Just so you have an idea, the Zoj receives either a half or a quarter, and in this situation where it's just him and father alive, he would receive a half. And in this situation, the father would receive Asaba, or the remainder. So this is the remainder after the husband has received his half. So again, that would be a half. So this is the basic layout. We place the people underneath underneath the line, and we then assign them their shares according to who's alive at that time. In the next lesson, I'm going to explain the other elements of this, which is essentially we will need to place a number here, and how we decide what that number is, and then how we finally work out who gets what for a more complicated situation.